Hello, and welcome to What the Fun Facts with Lily. I'm your host, Lily, and I'm not an expert on anything. Get ready for some of that good info for you to impress that person you like. You know the one. Now let's get this show on the road. Alright, hello! As you might be able to tell from the title, this is going to be another guest episode. And today I'm here with my friend Faust. Hello!
Hi!
And what are you going to be talking about today?
I am going to be talking about slasher films.
Yeah, that's something I don't know about, so I'm excited to learn.
That is something I know an absurd amount about. So, slasher films are a distinctly American genre. All of the major slasher films were filmed and created by American directors, and so I think they're a really interesting, reflective piece of American film, because a lot of the tropes that are solidified and that are well known are direct references to our cultural beliefs.
So, where did this genre even come from?
So slasher films are mainly inspired by a few different foreign films. So they're inspired a lot by Italian giallo films, which giallo actually means yellow in Italian, and they were basically really cheap paperbacks that were often colored yellow, and they were mystery thrillers. They were really popular, so they started to make films out of those, and those would have a very significant impact on how slasher films started. They're also based off of a German genre of crime thrillers called Krimi, or I'm probably saying that wrong.
It's fine.
German's not my strong suit. And then they were also influenced by splatter films. Splatter films are also based in Italian culture. They're a lot of the directors were Italian.
Oh, okay.
And splatter films are specifically horror films that are really based in gore and very graphic violence.
I'm guessing it comes from blood splatter?
Yeah, it does. That type of film can actually be traced back all the way to a film called Intolerance that showed a soldier being speared through, basically.
Oh.
And it dates all the way back to 1916.
Oh, that's
really early.
That's a very long time ago, film-wise.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. Agatha Christie's novel, 10 Little Indians, which came out in 1939, would also heavily inspire early horror films that would eventually morph into the slasher film genre. And it would inspire specifically House of Wax, that came out in 1953, and The Bad Seed, which came out in 1956. And then slasher films started to get really popular in the early 70s, but the golden age is around 1978 to 1984, which starts with Halloween is the first big slasher film. Everybody knows Halloween.
Yeah.
The soundtrack is iconic. Yeah, the really shrill, high-pitched noises, which you will see actually being used in a lot of slasher films, even very modern ones. And then it really ends at in the 84, where Nightmare on Elm Street comes out, and that's kind of the end of the golden era, where slasher films start to be more direct to DVD, Jason and Friday the 13th, Jason in space, kind of, where the quality starts to diminish a little bit. In this golden era, you have Halloween, you have When a Stranger Calls, Friday the 13th, My Bloody Valentine, Sleepaway Camp. A lot of classic slashers are in this era, and this is also when we start to solidify a lot of tropes that are still used today. And the biggest one that really got started and that really became a very detailed trope would be the final girl trope. And basically the final girl trope is in the cast of characters in a slasher film. You have a lot of different characters. We also start to see like the whore trope and like the jock and the goofy one. But the final girl is the most like well thought out, well formed one. It's basically the final girl, the one who's still alive at the end, and she's virginal, she doesn't smoke or do drugs or have sex. She is everything that a girl is supposed to be. And so she is usually the one at the end that survives. She at least makes it to the end. Sometimes in like modern films they don't survive, but in the golden age they always survive. And you can actually start to see it taking place and like forming a little bit before 1978 with the main character in Black Christmas. You can even see some of that being started in Psycho. But the first like true final girl is actually Sandy from Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
She's the only one to survive. She's a good like virginal, very like kind-hearted person, and you start to see that in a lot of slasher films after Texas Chainsaw Massacre comes out, which actually a lot of tropes started in Texas Chainsaw, with the one who's like smokes weed, like the slut, the jock, the final girl. They all kind of start there. You also see a couple killer tropes start. Mm-hmm. You'll see a lot of like inbreeding and like cannibalism, especially in like the 80s and like early into the 90s, which is the Silver Age. It's not great, but there are some good films in there. But you start to see a lot of like inbreeding, cannibalism, especially it starts to solidify like the big like burly stereotype for like the killers. You see with Michael and a lot with Jason too, where they're played by like 6'8", almost 7 feet tall kind of characters, so that they're really, really imposing and scary. The final girl trope is really interesting because it is like directly related to what the American idea of like a woman should be. Someone who's a virgin, they're very kind, empathetic. They really start to feel like, it almost starts to feel like propaganda almost, where like the only girl to survive, the only one that's worthy in quotation marks of surviving is the final girl. And it's just very reflective of American culture and American values, especially in like the 70s. And that's the final girl trope and how slasher films came to be.
I mean, that's pretty interesting because in Cabin in the Woods, that they use that trope, like that's the main trope that they use that they kind of make fun of and parody a little bit.
Yeah, a really recent, like 2010 and on kind of trope is like the reversal of the final girl, where she's not all of the original slasher final girl trope traits, but she's smart and she's still a good person, but she's cunning and witty and she doesn't take shit from anybody.
Nice.
And that's a really common trope that they're starting to lean more towards. And it also is reflective of how our culture is changing through time, and how we no longer are valuing like virginity and like submissive kindness, and we're valuing more intelligence and more like strong like female characters.
Yeah, I'm into that.
Yeah, I am too. You see it a lot in like Happy Death Day and Freaky. You start to see a hint of that coming through in Scream, which came out in 1996. That trait of a movie or like a slasher film wouldn't carry on until like the late 2000s, early 2010s.
Okay.
So there's a lot of like deep like cultural significance to slasher films, but they got really popular because they're fun. Like causing physical pain to people has been a form of entertainment for as long as humanity has been around. We love watching people get hurt for some
like
reason.
hangings were a big public event.
Yeah. And even like there's a specific type of theater that's really old, like 1800s, that is really gory, really, really gross, which is actually kind of what Intolerance was inspired by, that movie that came out in 1916. There is just a lot of really interesting little tidbits that slasher films like lead towards, and then you get slasher films that like slasher films are like a branch off of like really well established genres, and then you get genres that stem off of slasher films, like I hate to use this word, but like torture porn, like Hostel or Saw, where it's just really gross, really violent, and it's literally like exploitation. Mm-hmm. You also get like Rape and Revenge, which, you know, a woman is assaulted and then she basically goes and kills the people that assaulted her, like I Spit on Your Grave, Last House on the Left, which have fallen out of popularity like hardcore. They're not popular anymore because they feel really, it gives a lot of people a really icky feeling.
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun to watch.
Some women say that they feel empowered by them, by like watching a woman who has been assaulted take back and like mutilate and kill the men that did it to her. But a lot of women who also have experienced sexual assault just feel like they're really graphic for no reason. Mm-hmm. And another issue is that a lot of times they're male directors directing these.
Oh, come on.
They're male directors directing these, like Rape and Revenge, directing these films, and the assault scenes are filmed to be like sexy, and it's really problematic and really gross. So those are not very popular. But slashers today are still really are still in the zeitgeist. We come out with movies every year that are maybe, depending on how you feel, not as good, that are direct like use of the tropes and directly like genres, like slasher films.
Well, thank you so much for being on.
Yeah, thank you for letting me info dump on you.
It's completely okay. This is what this is all about. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Follow, rate, or whatever you do the podcast you like. Or not. I'm not your mommy. But it'd be really nice of you if you did. And you'll get a double thumbs up from me. As always, have a great day.